So I want you to look closely for just a second, right here. You see this thing? This right here, this is actually pretty easy. And this guy right here, this is also pretty easy. But this whole contraption, this is where things start to get a little more interesting. And here's what I mean by interesting, because last year I started playing this guitar. You see it? And pretty quickly I realized just how different it actually was from everything that I had been playing before. I mean, look at this thing. Like, what is this? And the thing I kept finding the most interesting wasn't solely that the guitar was different, but how specifically a guitar this different was really able to lure me in. And how I think it's probably lured a lot of players in.
Phase 1 was the slowest, because this was before I was even familiar or wanted anything to do with the offset game. It was a lot of watching my favorite players and every so often seeing them pull out one of these guitars with all the knobs and thinking to myself,
why in the world would anyone play something like this?
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But also stopping every once in a while and admitting to myself that one, maybe that one doesn't look so bad.
So here's the deal. Phase 1. This is where it gets interesting and also exciting. And that's because it feels like there's this blank canvas. You got nothing. You know nothing about the offset guitars. In a lot of ways, for me personally, I didn't want to. And the biggest reason for that, this little thing called exposure. And it works that way with every single guitar. I like strats because the players I was listening to played strats. I started liking tellies because the players that I was listening to played tellies. But I didn't really have that with jaguars. I didn't grow up listening to surf rock. I didn't know who Thurston Moore was. All of my favorite players were so far from this world, except for probably one guy that I knew of. His name was Johnny Buckland. He's one of my favorite guitar players of all time, and even he doesn't even use that guitar anymore. It was really only in a couple of performances, a couple of specific songs from the early 2000s, but that was really the guy for me, who, even though that guitar wasn't necessarily my thing yet, every time I would see him play one, back from those videos from the MTV live sessions in the early 2000s, it would just create this small little bit of curiosity where I'd say, you know, that one actually looks kind of good there. But it's still probably not necessarily for me, but that all started to change during phase 2.
Phase 2 was where the game really got moving in ways that I couldn't have expected many years before, because this was when I finally started messing with the Jazzmaster for the first time. And it was like a whole new world was opening up for me. The controls were different than all the strats and tellies I had played before. The way that it felt just playing and sitting down, that was different. All the vibes had changed and I could not for 1 second complain.
Let's be honest, it was always going to start here because the Jazzmaster, in a lot of ways, it felt a little bit more accessible. This was like my gateway drug into the world of the Jag, but not even knowing it would take me there yet. And it really all started with me getting into the indie scene, like the modern indie scene, where I was listening to some of these artists, people who weren't even known as guitar players, people like Clairo, people like Soccer Mommy, all these people who I would watch really closely, who weren't even necessarily known as lead guitar players, but I was really just crazy inspired by their sound. And they were all playing these offset guitars, most of which, if they weren't actual Jazzmasters, were very clearly heavily inspired by that guitar. And slowly over time, it just began to grow on me more and more and more until it finally came time. Well, let me get out of the case. Let's see this. That is where this young lady first came into my life. And she was so different. I mean, we had all these controls that I didn't know what they were. It was a lot longer scale than I was used to playing with the strats and with the tellies, and the sound was completely different. But everything that made it different that I thought I would never love, those are all the reasons why I started to really fall for it. And the more I started to fall for it, the more I started to ask these questions, thinking to myself, this thing has all of these controls, and I finally know what they do. But the Jag, it has even more controls, so will I like that, and how different will it actually be? And that's where I started into phase 3.
Phase 3 was where we finally arrived at the big moment, where all of the build-up seemed to finally hit its big breaking point. It was the time when I got to strum those first few chords, play those first few licks, mess with all of the knobs that I didn't yet fully understand, and start to ask the basic questions about what this thing was and who the heck it was for.
So phase 3 is the most tangible of all of these because these were the moments where it all became real. I no longer went to the hypotheticals of what will a Jag be like, or in my head, how is it actually different from the Jazzmaster, but it was time to experience it in real time, and that's where this bad boy really came into the picture. And it felt new and it felt fresh because it wasn't just that I was learning an instrument, I was learning a history behind an instrument, and this guitar in specific was the Johnny Marr Jag, and I didn't even know who Johnny Marr was. Outside of one clip from a rom-com that I had watched years earlier, I had no clue anything about the Smiths, Johnny Marr, how he played, why he played. It was all completely new to me. And that's not even getting into the weeds of the actual guitar yet, because once I started figuring out these controls and the different sounds that you could actually get from them, it was like, okay, we're playing with fire now. And it all really started with trying to learn the usual Jag layout and recognizing that this being the Johnny Marr signature specifically, it had a few subtle quirks that were just a little bit different from that. The first of which being it had a 4-way, which I had never actually seen on a guitar before, so I wondered what pickup configurations that would have to do with, not knowing that the 4th position puts the pickups in series. Now, in my time as a guitar player, I'd played a lot of coil splits before. It was my preference in terms of strats with SSH, and also I had tried a lot of different PRSs, but this was my first experience with what seemed like the other way around and a completely new sound. Come to find out that that's really only the beginning when it came to this guitar, because then I got to these two knobs right here, the first of which being the universal bright switch, which I had only really used on amps, but I never really liked because I usually tended to lean more towards bassier sounds. But once I started doing the indie thing, that became more and more of a usable tone to put in my arsenal. The same exact thing for this other knob, which turned out to be an extra bright solely for when the pickups were in series in that 4th position.
Phase 4 was very different from all the other phases because this one didn't happen until very recently. These were the moments when I got to look back on the past year and just analyze, see how many feelings had changed, what I liked about the guitar initially, and how I felt about it in the current moment.
Phase 4 is probably my favorite because Phase 4 is where you get to look back. Phase 4 is when you're not just playing the guitar for the first time, but when you've had a guitar or you've experienced a guitar for a long amount of time, and you're able to look back, not just to the moments where you first got the guitar, first started playing it, but to the moments before you had even considered giving a guitar like this a shot. And you're like, okay, how much have I as a player changed? What do I like now that I didn't like back then? And for me specifically, it had nothing to do with what I might have initially thought. Because it wasn't just that I now liked a guitar that I didn't like before, that I liked a guitar that I never thought I'd play because it may have sounded better, but it's like the specific sounds that I may have even been looking for have kind of changed. And not only that, when it came to this specific guitar, I started comparing it less to strats and tellies and started looking at it more in the context of different jags and thinking to myself, oh, I don't even know if I'm fully in the jag world yet, because the Johnny Marr signature, even in a lot of ways, is kind of a stripped down jag. It doesn't have the usual knobs in place of where this one has a pickup selector. It varies a little bit from the strangle switch. And I got to dive way deeper into the world of the jags that I didn't have yet. All of the history behind it, watching the 5-Watt World videos, watching the Andertons review these different guitars, and thinking to myself, the big question, have I really turned into this guy? And if the answer is yes, I might be really happy about that. If I had to sum up everything that I've learned about this guitar over the past year, I think I'd simply say that I really love guitars like the Strat and like the 335. Those guitars in my repertoire that I have these very, very easy and memorable love at first sight moments with. And the thing I love most about the Jags and the Jazzmasters is just how far away from that it actually was. I think that's a lot of what makes those guitars special to me. The fact that it took time and that I can look back at that over the course of a year, or even more than that if I'm looking for where the real seeds were planted with some of these offset guitars, and think to myself, oh, I'm a very different player than I was back then. And looking back at all these phases, I can learn from even the ways that I approached what I liked in a guitar, what I wanted in a guitar, or how I got a certain sound. I think that's really cool. But I don't think it matters what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know. Are you a fan of the Jag? Do you like the Jazzmaster better? Do you like offsets at all? What are the phases you went through? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I've been wanting to make another Jag video, well, at least a follow-up, for a long time. But if you want to know anything more about this guitar, I got it from the homies at Sweetwater. The links are in the description. Make sure to check it out. One of the best ways to support the channel, if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the other gear that I used in this video, amps, pedals, even the camera, make sure to check out those links. Also, thank you so much to all of my patrons. There's some extra exclusive content on there if you want to join the community. Like and subscribe if you had a good time. Most importantly, most important of all, have a fantastic night.